the Democratic Alliance is calling for an explanation on reinstating 13 suspended officials at the Gauteng Department of Social Development without a formal disciplinary process. This group includes chief directors, and regional managers, all of whom were suspended in September 2023 for their alleged roles in corrupt procurement practices. Let's unpack this with Refiloe Nt'sekhe, who's an MP and DA Gauteng Shadow MEC for Social Development. Refiloe, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And before we even get to why they've been reinstated, let's just refresh for those who don't remember the story as well. Why the 13 officials were suspended in the first place and the effects that this had on Gauteng NGOs.
Masa, good evening, and good evening to the viewers of Newzroom Afrika. I think this department has basically been in turbulent mess. And when these officials were suspended, these, as you can see, they're very senior, the senior most officials in a department. This led to the department being on autopilot, literally technocrats being hollowed out of the department. For almost a year, the department didn't have proper decision makers. In fact, it led to them even underspending by over 554 million rand. And of that amount, 228 million is money that was earmarked for NPOs. So they haven't even went for any disciplinary hearings up to date. They just got reinstated. So you can imagine being suspended from work, told there's allegations of corruption against you. I asked questions even in the previous term. I've amended those questions and tabled them again this term to say, what exactly did these officials do? A contractor was hired to run a forensic audit against these officials. The report has not been tabled, not to me in terms of my written questions. It also hasn't come through to the portfolio committee. They've just been reinstated. But even the labor laws, how do you suspend people for almost 11 months and then just reinstate them without disciplinary hearing? The welfare sector in Gauteng has really suffered because of their suspensions and the fact that some of the people left behind were very junior staff, or there was also duplication of payments because they were suspended with pay, and then people had to come in and act in some of their positions. Not necessarily the most competent people were in those roles as well. So the hardship has really been felt in this province in terms of how the previous MEC Nt'sekhe was running this department.
And the previous MEC, Nt'sekhe, was mentioned quite a bit, and almost, I mean, she's no longer the MEC, of course, and the Premier of Gauteng also apologized how everything was run and said things would get better under this new administration as well. But now, I mean, over 200 million rand earmarked for those NPOs. A lot of those doors, Refiloe, as you know, shut down during that period as well. These NPOs that need this money as well.
Masa, I cannot tell you the pain I have seen in this province. I went to a place I unfortunately cannot disclose because it will jeopardize my whistleblowers, where 2 children had died from hunger because a drop-in center where they normally eat was closed, and then it was during school holidays, so the school feeding program was also not functional. The eldest was 11, one was 8. So they literally suffered, and that resulted in their death. A gentleman of 79 years old contacted me saying that his brother of 83, who was on Pampers, was dropped at his house because the old age home where he had been staying had closed down, and they can only afford NPO run old age homes because they can't afford the 10,000 that was required from a private old age home. So imagine somebody of 79, a man being told to look after his 83-year-old brother who needs to be, you know, turned around to prevent bed sores, diapered, assisted. How do you, that's the kind of suffering that I've seen under the leadership of MEC Nt'sekhe. And the acting the HOD Matilda Gazella, who was now terminated in April, because I'd also put pressure with the Public Service Commission to say, even with her, I could not understand how she was actually appointed as an HOD when there was 2 adverse findings against her by the SIU, Was she the best caliber? Clearly not, because look at the cost, the pain she's caused this department, and she's left it in disarray.
You know, you also made mention earlier about, you know, the 13 officials being quite senior officials as well, and this vacuum that they left, that, you know, then the department and they in their fields as well, it was juniorized too. So obviously having an effect as well. But these 13 officials, the allegations against them that got them suspended in the first place for corrupt procurement practices, allegedly, those are quite serious allegations as well. So there clearly was already money that was being allegedly misused by these kinds of officials as well. So returning them, even though they are senior, that I don't think is going to solve the problem, would it?
Well, Masa, I think let the law take its course. My concern is the following. You suspend people on allegations of corruptions. Let's call it corruption. You go and hire a company to do forensic audit against them. There is no report to this day that says this is exactly what we found out based on the reasons for them having been suspended. And then you don't take them through a disciplinary hearing, and then you just reinstate them. That on its own is ludicrous on staff. Why did they not go through disciplinary hearing? Why didn't the report come out publicly or to the committee to say they were suspended for this corruption, and this is what we, through the forensic auditing, found out to enforce the reasons why they were suspended? So we are still hanging in the sense that, yes, if people have done wrong, they should be fired. In fact, they should even be criminally charged if they have been found wanting. But now they don't even know what they've done really, because they've just been reinstated without even going through a disciplinary hearing. 11 months sitting at home. And then again, wasting taxpayers. There's possibly been people that have been paid to act in their position for 11 months. I mean, this is just a crazy scenario. I've never seen anything like this in the 10 years that I had served in the legislature in terms of handling labor issues or handling the welfare sector in itself.
So you haven't received anything, and you're obviously part of this as well, and privy to this too. So should the Department of Social Development and Gauteng come back and say, look, we have run our investigation, we haven't found these 13 wanting, would you then be satisfied with that?
You know what? If an audit was completed and a report is made public, starting with the committee, which I think the committee has a right to know why they were suspended and then what was the outcome of the report, then by all means reinstate them. If you find other evidence later on, then follow due process, suspend, go through disciplinary hearing, and fire. I'm not defending anybody here. All I'm saying is procedurally, things were done in a manner that is very flawed, which also then cost the NPOs of this province, because then you have people who were decision makers that were literally left out of the loop in terms of what needs to happen, and people that were not competent to then run the department were just running the department, or the department was on autopilot.
You know, Refiloe, a cloud that hangs over this department in this province is obviously life esidimeni. And many, many times we've been saying we've learned from life esidimeni, and such will not happen again. The examples that you're raising as well, children who aren't getting the proper food they need to get because there's no feeding schemes, or the NPOs are not available because the money isn't there for them, or the instances of the elderly not being able to take care of themselves too. You said it's in a turbulent mess. You were around during those days as well. If you had to rate the department's work since the days of Kadani Mahlangu, when she was the MEC, and what had happened as well in the department, particularly of social development though, how would you rate it now? Would you say that we are making some strides, you know, this case aside?
No, I think this is the worst I've seen of the department. But I want to say, we even had the MEC, the new MEC, Faith Mazibuko, in the committee yesterday. I think she has the most enviable task of cleaning up a catastrophic mess that I've never seen in my life. And I want to give her the chance, because the mess was not created by her. even though it was her counterparts from the same from the ANC. But honestly, I'm not going to judge her. I want to give her the opportunity to rectify the department and get it going again. But this is the worst I've seen. Like I'm saying, from 2014, when I became a member of the legislature until now, I've worked with many, many MECs of the ANC. And yes, there would be, non-performance here and there, but this is the worst of its type that I've ever experienced with this department. And unfortunately, they should have been keeping a close eye on what was happening in health with Ketani Mahlangu, because that's an example to say, quite frankly, even where I'm sitting, I think Mbali is just the world needs to educate me. She should have been criminally charged for the negligence and suffering and pain caused to not only NPOs and their employees, but the beneficiaries, which are the most vulnerable people of Gauteng who depend on the services being provided by those NPOs. There should be some kind of criminal charges when officials or public servants who are in positions neglect their responsibilities deliberately, so the way that this was done.
Very concerning indeed. Refiloe, thank you so much for your time this evening. That was Refiloe Nt'sekhe, who is an MP and DA Gauteng Shadow MEC for Social Development.